Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin. Though when he made more, I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount, and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place, and in the process of having to submit our pay stubs, it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English Lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22K year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity //equity / inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen, and we haven't really talked since yesterday. I'm a software engineer with a full-time job and a side hustle of doing freelance coding work in my own time. I've always been the type to have a side hustle I put a lot of my free time into. I get really bored sitting idle. My freelance hourly rates are $60 an hour, and at my full-time job, my hourly pay works out to about $40 an hour. So that's how I value my time. Anyway, over Christmas vacation, I was staying at my parents' house. My cousin was also staying over with her 3 young kids from Christmas to New Year's. I'd been planning on doing some work on my freelance projects when I had free time, in the mornings when my family had no plans. I wasn't in any rush. I was already ahead of schedule on them all, but I didn't really have anything else to do. It was in a really rural area, and it's like an hour drive to the nearest anything. Then my cousin and her husband asked if I could babysit all day for 3 days, so they could visit some friends in the area and hang out with just adults. I said I had planned on doing freelance work at the library, and she offered to pay me to babysit. I said I could if they got close to my freelance rates. She wanted a number, and although my freelance rates are $60, I didn't feel like that was right. It was high. But I didn't want to go too low. Honestly, babysitting 3 kids would be harder for me than the routine coding work I had for my freelance project. I don't know a lot about kids, and I've never babysat for long, and I had a feeling it would be stressful and difficult. So I said $35, which is below what I make hourly at work, and what is the bare minimum I'd value my time for, if that time is spent doing difficult work. And she went crazy at me, saying that's a ridiculous rate for babysitting, that I was entitled and being selfish, that I'm trying to take advantage of how she didn't have other options, etc. I said that's way below what I'd be making if I had the time to do my own work, and I'd be putting off my own work to babysit. Her husband then got mad at me, saying that I was a 24-year-old girl, that I'm damn near a child myself. That my time is not worth that much and it's childish to say that it was. And that I was a stupid girl for not knowing that babysitting costs like $15 an hour. When I grew up and have kids of my own, I will see how stupid I was being. I was kind of done with being called stupid, so I just told them I hope they could find someone else. My mom thinks that I asked for something offensive, and my cousin and her husband obviously did too. My girlfriend, Rose, and I have been together for 4 years and she is 5 months pregnant with our first child. My mom seemed to really like Rose, or at the very least tolerated her, but after we announced that we were expecting, something definitely switched in her. She has become extremely rude and disrespectful towards my girlfriend. She makes passive-aggressive comments at every chance she gets. I've had to take a step back from my mother until she fixes her behavior. Rose had gone to visit her family who lives far out of town. It was a very last-minute trip, and she drove herself to the destination and back. Unfortunately, at around 6 p.m., her car broke down and she was forced to pull over. Fortunately, my brother, Chris, who's great with cars and lives about an hour and 1/2 from where Rose was stranded, was willing to pick her up and sorted everything out. I was out of the country, so I'm grateful that my brother sorted everything out for her. Chris moved back in with my mom about a year ago. Obviously, the situation wasn't the best, especially considering the tension between Rose and my mom that exists for no particular reason. But I hoped my mom could put her pettiness aside for at least a night. It was too late for Chris to drive Rose back home, so my brother told her that he would drive her back tomorrow morning. An arrangement that my mom seems to not like, but one that she managed to keep her mouth shut about, my girlfriend tells me. Rose helps prepare dinner, wash up, and actually engage in a decent conversation with my mom for the first time in ages. However, they mostly avoid each other. Chris goes to bed earlier, leaving my mom and Rose. My mom lives in a 2-bedroom apartment, and since both bedrooms were taken, Rose assumed that she would be sleeping on the couch. She apparently assumed wrong. My mom gives Rose the thinnest blanket ever and basically screams at her, telling her that she has to sleep on the floor to not ruin her couch. She tells Rose to make do with the pillows on the couch and the blanket that provides zero warmth. Rose thought about protesting, but ultimately decided against it. According to Rose, my mom kept opening her door to check if she was sleeping on the couch, so she couldn't even try to sleep on the couch. At 5 a.m., Chris found Rose on the couch and let her sleep on his bed. He ended up telling me, but told me to not make a big fuss out of it. I did the exact opposite. I called my mom, very angry, and told her that she was disrespecting her so badly. She tried to defend herself by saying that she didn't harm the baby, and it's okay for pregnant women to sleep on the floor. But I refused to hear any of it. Chris agrees with me, but told me that I shouldn't make it a fight. I feel like I'm losing my mind. My dad married my stepmother 3 months ago, and I feel like it made my life significantly harder and less pleasant. They moved in with us, and for the indefinite future this situation will not change. We have a 3-bedroom house, and before they moved in, my dad and I had our rooms, both with bathrooms. And there was a smaller room which was a study for my dad. After they moved in, Jenny, 16, turning 17 next month, got my room. And I had to share the smaller room with 11-year-old Tom and 10-year-old Mike. All my books, my telescope, my stuff are packed and in the basement now since there's no space anymore. This made me real angry, but my dad told me that I have to be a team player, and this is what him and his wife agreed on. Jenny treats me like shit. She sometimes acts as if I'm not there at all, and sometimes is super aggressive and hostile towards me. The other I asked Tom to stop going through my things, and she became so angry that I have no right to order her brother around. She told me to get it in my thick skull that I'm not their big brother to tell them what to do, even though all I asked was for them to stop going through my things. She said it's best if I don't talk to them at all, since that way they will get less influence from a weirdo like me. What I don't get is that if she's so concerned that I might leave a bad influence on Tom and Mike, why doesn't she take them into her room? Tom and Mike don't respect any boundaries. They're always through my stuff. I have a watch which was a gift from my mother. She died of cancer, and they took it from my drawer and lost it. I found it weeks later in the basement with its front glass broken. Before they moved in, I used to get a $100 allowance every month. Now Jenny gets $75, I get $35, and Tom and Mike each get $30. I had an Xbox, but these kids broke it down. I used to spend a lot of time with my dad. He used to come see me play basketball almost every week. He hasn't done it even once in the past 3 months since he's always working overtime. We eat out once a week, and none of them in these 3 months have been to any of my favorite places, but Jenny, Tom, and Mike have each chosen their favorites more than once. I complained about all of it to my father last week, and he told me that family is all about sacrifices, and I have to make mine. Haven't I made enough sacrifices already? I feel like I'm the only one making sacrifices. I looked forward to them moving in here, but I now feel like an outsider at home. It's not my home anymore. Life has become very difficult for me. I spend as much time as I can outside because inside is so frustrating, but this is causing problems as well. My dad keeps telling me that not being around means I'm not accepting them as part of the family, while in reality it's the opposite. So I get grounded for not being around, and being around is horrible. I don't want to live here anymore, but I'm only 15 and can't move out. I have nobody else who can take me in. I can't stay here for 3 more years. I'll go crazy. I often fantasize about running away at night, but I know that's also as horrible, if not even more.